And welcome to our second Aberdeen-based webinar. We've got some great speakers on again this morning. The webinar itself is hosted by Scottish Business Cares as part of SBRC, and we've set this initiative up to try and help companies in all different areas in Scotland be able to network with each other and also hear information from other organisations around their areas. I'm going to hand over today's session again to be hosted by Graham Gordon from IFB. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope the sun's shining where you are and you get a little bit of it on your face without actually being through a window. Our focus today from our panel of speakers, and again, the second Aberdeen webinar that we're running is really about how we are emerging from this pandemic and our next steps forwards, and some thoughts around about that. You're going to be hearing from the panel on their experiences to date and what their thoughts are moving forward and what the challenges may be. A great lineup that we've got representing all forms, shapes and sizes of businesses locally. We're going to start off with Colette Backwell, who's the CEO of Clan, but also the president of the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce. Then we're going to move on to Deborah O Neill, who's the CEO at Nova Biotics, based here locally in the Northeast. Jared Owen, who's the director at One D&E, that's Opportunity Northeast Digital and Entrepreneurship, based at the Tech Hub here in School Hill in Aberdeen. Andy Atwell is a senior associate in employment teams at CMS. Andy's having a little bit of problem with his video today, but he's joining us in audio format, so please bear with him because what he's got to say is really relevant for many of us. And as always, we're going to round off with Hugh Little, who's the chairman of Clan Cancer Support and is also a business advisor and always has sage and valid points for all of us. My background here, Aberdeen is our headquarters as an IFB. That's where we're based, but we're an internationally operating company. We're a digital services organisation, so we're right in the thick of it, of enabling this flexible home working environment that we're all experiencing, embracing so well and so positively. And really a big part of our focus right now for us as a business is helping our customers, I suppose, reboot, you know, coming into the next stages and how they recover and how we assist them recovering from the pandemic. So we're a little bit busy, as you can imagine, just now. So first up, I'd like to introduce Colette Backwell, who is the CEO of Clan and also president of Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce. Colette, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Graham, and good morning, everyone else. And thank you very much for the invitation to join you this morning. I just thought I'd start by giving just a little bit of background about myself before going on to talking about Clan, our COVID-19 journey, the priorities we've established and how we've coped with the crisis so far. I just want to talk a little bit about morale and resilience amongst the staff team, and then finish by starting to open a discussion about recovery. My career up to date hasn't really involved the third sector. I've been at Clan now for 5 years, but prior to that I was a lobbyist for the UK food and drink manufacturing sector, and then for many years a senior civil servant in the UK and Scottish governments, and before that a research scientist. And in those roles, I've had at various times been responsible for risk analysis, emergency planning and response during BSE crisis, foot and mouth disease, various animal disease outbreaks, swine flu and food security. And the experience I've gained in all of those has helped enormously in terms of my personal resilience and helping us to plan our way through COVID-19. But I have to say that in all of those experiences, this is probably the worst I've experienced, with BSE as a close second. Many of you probably already know Clan, but just very briefly, we support 2,500 cancer patients and their families every year to help them deal with their cancer journeys through counselling, emotional support and a range of wellbeing therapies that we provide to help them deal with pain and stress and anxiety. But as a business, we have a £2.5 million a year turnover. We receive no public sector funding. We have 65 staff, a bank of contractors and 400 volunteers. We operate out of 8 centres across the whole of the northeast of Scotland and the Northern Isles, and we run 4 charity shops. So our COVID journey began on the 12th of March, where we had a routine meeting with the NHS, where one of the cancer specialists there actually shared with us some epidemiological data that showed that the UK was very closely following Italy in terms of number of COVID cases, but was a few weeks behind. And our concern was that cancer patients, especially those receiving treatment, are likely to be amongst the most severely affected by COVID. So we took a very rapid, very difficult decision to close our centres to clients the following day to protect the health and well-being of the clients and our staff. And by the 19th of March, we'd sent all staff home with the equipment to enable them to work at home. COVID has hit Clan along with other local charities and other businesses very hard. The major part of our income is impacted by the lockdown restrictions. Our shops are all closed. They account for 25% of our annual income. Clan and third-party fundraising events are cancelled and donations are down. And of course, we still have all the costs while we continue to provide services. And while we went into this with reasonably good reserves, these are rapidly depleting. So we quickly established with the senior management team and the board what our priorities were going to be throughout this. Number one is to protect the health and well-being of our clients and our staff while still providing services in any way we can, especially to the most vulnerable. The second is to protect jobs. And the third is to ensure the financial sustainability of the charity of the future so that we come out of this in a situation where we can continue to do what we've been doing for 37 years. The Clan team have been absolutely incredible. By week one, they'd implemented telephone and digital support services for cancer patients and their families. By week two, we had an online resource centre with videos. By week three, the income generation team had developed several online fundraising initiatives. And for those of you who are here at a loose end on a Sunday night, please join us at the Clan Sunday Sofa Quiz. It's great fun and it raises a few pounds for Clan. So we very much welcome the support that government has put in place, and in particular the job retention scheme. That has been a major part of our survival plan and ultimately our recovery plan. And at this point, 2/3 of our staff are on furlough. We've also accessed the Third Sector Resilience Fund and we're exploring other grants. But frankly, what government's done for third sector businesses has been a little behind the curve, and we're encouraging them to actively consider charities as they move into the recovery phase. We've had to strike a balance between the needs of cancer patients today with the survival of the charity for the future. And our actions have all been with that outcome at the forefront of our minds. And morale is absolutely key to that. It's really important to remember that while we're protecting the business, we also need to protect our staff and keep morale high. The team have been absolutely fantastic. Even those who've been put on furlough have been incredibly understanding about that. And everyone has stepped up with enthusiasm and innovation. We've actively taken steps to promote wellbeing and provide resources and support to all staff, including those on furlough. We're using digital platforms to facilitate staff events and social interaction, including next week we have a Clan gathering by Zoom, so I've no idea how that's going to work out. We send out regular communication updates so that everybody understands what we're doing and, most importantly, why we're doing it, and that has been very well received. And we're very fortunate to have a very supportive board, but I would say that with Hugh being another panel member today. So at this point in time, we're holding firm, that's as much as I can say, and we're now turning to recovery. We've already started to develop a plan for return to service provision and getting people back to whatever the new normal looks like with social distancing restrictions in mind. But of course, one of the uncertainties we have is that we don't know for sure when mass events will start again, and that's a major part of our income generation activity. So we could find ourselves in a situation where we're back to providing services, but actually still hampered by the way that we raise our income. Yesterday, I attended a webinar with Benny Higgins, who's the chair of the Scottish Government Economic Recovery Advisory Group. And I'm sure, as many of you know, that group is due to present recovery advice and plans by July, including some talk of a new investment fund. They're encouraging everyone to come forward with good plans, and that they see the crisis as an opportunity to accelerate previous plans for the economy. I just want to finish with a plea. This plea is to that group and to government at all levels to properly consider not just economic growth and recovery, but inclusive growth and recovery, which combines increased prosperity with equality and opportunities for all, and a fair distribution of that prosperity across all sectors. A vital part of that will be to work with local third sector organisations to ensure that recovery plans protect and enhance the future sustainability of this vital sector so that we can continue to support some of the most vulnerable in society. And I'm not just talking about Clan, I'm talking about charities that support the homeless, those in food poverty, those with mental health issues, and other life-limiting conditions such as cancer, not just in the short term, but for the longer term. So that's all I have to say at the moment, and at some point perhaps I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Absolutely, Colette. Thank you. Wow, that was an impressive 10 minutes, and thanks for your resume and the resume and what Clan are doing in a real vital part of the local economy and the ecosystem. The charities that we've all supported over a long period of time are suffering probably more than most. And questions on that, or any points that anybody want to raise on that, will be available through the Q&A forum that we've got, that will be opening up during the conferences or the webinar as well. Thank you very much. And one point I'm looking forward to is Colette sharing the details on the Clan Sunday social. And all £5 are well received and donated. So if you can share that with us a bit later, we'll maybe push that out to others here. And I've got to do that because Hugh's on the call as well, and
Absolutely.
otherwise he finds me.
That's great.
So Colette, thank you very much. Next up, Deborah O Neill, who is the CEO of Nova Biotics, to tell us how she's coping with lockdown and COVID and what the next steps for Nova Biotics are. Deborah, morning.
Morning, thanks Graham, and hello to everyone. So yeah, I guess I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. My business, Nova Biotics, is a biotechnology company developing new treatments for infectious disease. So as you can imagine from that description, we're very much in the thick of it as regards trying to come up with solutions to COVID. Our sector is kind of responsible for finding the solution, and that's not just biotech companies but academia and obviously research in the NHS, and we're all very much partnered together in this. So it's horrible that in a way, you know, a pandemic is a massive opportunity in one sense for our sector, and particularly businesses like ours who are developing therapies anyway for these kinds of diseases. So we're in this odd position where we're busier than ever, but having to work under very different circumstances. Normally, you know, I'm trying to protect the staff from the bugs that we're working on and the infections that we're trying to find treatments for in the lab. Now, the biggest issue is the bug that's outside there and we may bring in with us. So very different way of working. We are all essential workers, but having to go in using things like shift systems, much longer days, social distancing where people are spread out around the labs, even though they're in the same building. Obviously they can't socialize, nobody's sat having coffee or having a lunch together, but it's working. One thing I think that's a real positive, as well as the acceleration, if you like, of a lot of our activities and fast tracking the COVID program, is, you know, really the stretching the staff even further outside of their comfort zone than they normally are. And this new way of working, and particularly having to be out of the labs and doing a lot of, if not all of the non-lab stuff from home, pushing them to learn different skills, people being tasked and asked to do slightly different things. And we've actually cleared the deck, so the team are feeling not just good about being part of the COVID, hopefully solution of the future, but getting a ton of the stuff that you're normally too busy to do when you're in the labs, doing experiments, coming up with normal treatments, no excuse not to have done it, and they're actually feeling really good for having worked through a ton of stuff, and in the future more prepared to take that on. So that, I think, has been a positive, just kind of adapting people's roles and people realizing that they're probably a lot better than they realized and thought they were at certain aspects of their job that probably weren't seen as being that important under kind of the old normal. Other new things are an accelerated way of having to do what we do, and this has been an interesting challenge as well. So the race is on, obviously, to get new treatments for COVID as soon as possible. We may never have a vaccine. It may be something that we have to live with for the longer term and de-risk actually getting that disease so that you are not at risk of mortality and the morbidity that it can cause. And the way that that's happening is phenomenal. So a drug development process. So, you know, coming up with something that's in the fridge from a standing start to getting it into patients will normally be 9 to 12 months, even for a first clinical trial. We've put that together in 7 weeks, and that's never happened before. So even the way that we're interacting with the regulatory authorities, completely different process, much more fluid. Everything has been fast-tracked, timelines without risking the quality and certainly the safety of patients has been shrunk. So even that's very different, new way of working. Funding that has been a challenge, something that obviously fast tracking this was never in anybody's budgets. Nobody saw this coming. No biotech company had a budget line that says, here's to getting a COVID therapy or, you know, potentially even a new test out there in months. So engaging with the government and stakeholders who are providing support for this and onboarding at a central government level potential new therapies. So all of this new stuff is now going to be embedded in the company forever. So in terms of the team, how we operate, what we do, I think, you know, that has been a real positive. We've learned a lot. We know there's a different, possibly better way of doing things. You know, we all step back every now and again and kind of go, wow, you know, look what we've done. And that's really good. So that's great for the team. That's going to stay with us forever. And, you know, again, it's bizarre thinking that a pandemic like this and such a horrible thing could be an opportunity. But for us, it's something that's, you know, going to really impact our growth and our success for the future. So I will end there. Obviously, a very different take on it, and hopefully give everyone on the call some positives, because Novobiotics aren't in this alone. You would be amazed at how much is going on and the efforts out there, how many things are being tested, and the activity that, you know, you don't hear about in the press to try and get treatments for this as soon as possible. There is a lot going on. So that's a positive that's beyond Novobiotics that I hope you can take away from this.
Deborah, thank you very much. I mean, it's really interesting. You're talking about acceleration there in line with Colette and the conversation that was happening at Scottish Advisory level yesterday with the Benny conference with SCDI. Unfortunately, it took them 1 hour and 40 minutes to get round to mention SMEs, but that's a different point that we'll come to at another point. But you're now accelerating it. You've delivered things in a matter of weeks rather than a matter of months. And obviously that puts a different impact in the business, which is really interesting. And I have to say, it's, you know, you're probably not public aware, and public are not normally aware of what you're doing, but it's like an IT virus. When there's a hack or a scam or as a virus happens, everybody comes and speaks to us about IT. It's quite, I mean this in the nicest possible way, it's quite nice that this type of virus, everybody's now focused over on you, and it's less in the IT side of things. So it's great for profile if you're doing it properly. Different type of virus and different type of impact. Deborah, thank you very much. Next up, we're going to hear from Jared Owen, who's a director at 1D&E. He's based here in Aberdeen as well. So we're going to hear about Opportunity to Northeast overall impact and actions and their views on moving forward from here. Jared, good morning.
Good morning, Graham, and thank you, and good morning to everyone as well. I'm going to start by providing a quick recap on One and some of the work we are doing during and plan for post-COVID-19, as it's really focused towards the long-term resilience of the region. For those that don't know, One was formed in late 2015 as the private sector's response to the economic challenges in the region and to drive growth across 5 key sectors. 1, energy, more specifically supply chain and diversification. 2, internationalization, and more recently, energy transition. 2, food and drink manufacturing and agriculture. 3, life sciences. 4, digital, that's the sector that I'm involved in. And lastly, tourism through our partnership with Visit Aberdeenshire. We're a small organisation. We only have 30 employees covering those 5 sectors. Our work focuses around working with government in Holyrood and Westminster, local authority, public sector, private sector organisations, academia and industry bodies, really working on those business cases and programmes to gain support, funding and partnerships to drive economic growth in the region. the work that we do over our 10-year period really aims to change the region's course over the next 50 years and beyond, regardless of the impact of COVID-19. Like many other organisations, one has had to change and adapt to how we work. We have had to accelerate our own use and understanding of the digital tools. All the teams have done a great job, as well as engage with our sectors who are going through the same challenges to accelerate this adoption as we are. It's fair to say some take to it easier than others. We've had to rethink and reset a number of our own projects, taking into account not just where the region finds itself, but where the world finds itself today economically. What I want to talk about is some of the key projects that we continue to drive during COVID-19, as they're really critical towards the long-term future for the region. Maybe a little bit in the past, but in June last year, the One Tech Hub opened its doors. It's a 1.5 million investment and refurbishment of the former RGU building at School Hill. We're still learning what works and what doesn't work as we evolve the hub. As you can imagine, COVID-19 doesn't work well for the hub. We've secured funding for 21 million regional food hub on the outskirts of Aberdeen at Craibston. That's going to be the home to deliver our ambition of growing the food and drink sector here in the northeast. We've secured funding and planning approval for a 40 million biohub project on Aberdeen's Forest Hill campus. That will provide the physical infrastructure to grow businesses, nurture new commercial opportunities, and connect academics and health researchers to the wider industry. And then lastly, earlier this year, we announced plans to create an energy transition zone close to the new Aberdeen South Harbour, which has just been approved by the council this month. Those are just some of the big projects that we're driving within Opportunity Northeast. There are many others that are in the planning and in delivery across our 5 sectors. Just to focus a little bit more now on One Digital and entrepreneurship, where I work. So around the One Tech Hub, we're working closely with Codebase to deliver focused webinars and other interactive events, as well as educational resources for both adults and for children. We're signposting to all the other relevant content and activity from our partners, such as the Barclays Evo Labs and the Data Lab. We continue our own virtual coffee mornings. It's the Morning Grind. It currently runs every month, but we hope to increase the frequency. It's a short commentary on relevant business topics, followed by breakout sessions and an opportunity for networking. We continue to deliver our virtual hot desk check-in. This allows us to connect with many others in our community and our partners across the board that are involved with us at the One Tech Hub. And lastly, we're continuing to provide our mentoring and support. This is really open to anyone who is either starting, growing, and just plain thinking about a business idea around digital. So we really welcome anyone who's thinking like that to come and have a conversation with us. The next area that's got a real focus for us at Opportunity Northeast and is key for the region is around digital skills and multi-skilling. We are in partnership with Robert Gordon's University, University of Aberdeen, CodeClan, the Data Lab, and Jump Digital on a Northeast Digital Skills partnership. We're in the process of designing an online platform to funnel all of the digital skills courses into a one-stop shop portal. Of course, a lot of our partners already have educational material online. The Data Lab's MOOCs and their executive education sessions are already there. They're fantastic. Encourage you to take a look at those. RGU has already launched its online strategic digital marketing course in April. It was oversubscribed within the first week. CodeClan is going live with 2 online short courses over the next couple of weeks. The first being understanding applications. Now, that's not aimed at software developers and programmers. It's aimed at those individuals who find themselves working with applications developers and programmers and how to best interact and engage and understand their ways of working and methodologies. The second is agile methodologies for growth within your teams. And then lastly, Jump Digital, in partnership with Skills Development Scotland and the University of Aberdeen, are also getting ready to go live with their online digital marketing course. If it's anything like RGU's, it will be subscribed to very, very quickly. I think lastly, for Opportunity Northeast and the work that we're involved in on a daily basis is connecting businesses. So we're currently engaged in connecting business across all of our sectors who are looking for help in digitalizing their business or starting their digital transformation journey. This is really open to everyone. If you are looking for help, you don't know where to turn or where to start, please get in touch with us and we will ensure that you are connected with the right digital technology companies here in the region who can help you. And I think that covers it for me. Graham, happy to take any questions later. Back to you.
Fantastic, Jared. Thanks very much. Jared and I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to be the vice chair on the One D&E board, and the work that the team have done there over the last 18 months is fantastic, trying to bring the digital sector to the forefront of most people's thinking, working and strategy. And hey, guess what? Over the last 8 weeks, IT and digital's played a major part of keeping us all going. But really connecting people as well, as Jared was saying, and the previous couple of speakers have been saying as well, how do you maintain that team work in adverse conditions? How do you maintain that customer engagement in difficult times? Because let's face it, as much as we all like a Zoom meeting, of course, we all love them now. And the challenge is, how do we maintain this level of communication moving forward? And that's really important, something I hope we can touch on later on. And from the human factor, thanks very much again, Jared. From the human factor, we're going to move on to Andy Atwell, who's a senior associate at CMS, based in Aberdeen normally, but now in the top floor of his house somewhere. And he's going to talk through the strategies and the outlook about how we restart and reboot, how we bring people back into the workplace, and that whole overall employment law element that we need to be considering and acting upon sooner rather than later. Andy, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, Graham. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Fantastic. First of all, thank you very much for having me on this panel. My name is Andy Atwell, and I'm an employment lawyer with CMS in Aberdeen. Being based in Aberdeen, we provide legal services to a host of operators and service providers in the energy sector, but we are a UK business, and we are helping a wide range of sectors and industries in the current crisis. I'm here for a brief spell, as Graham said, to talk to you about some of the employment law issues of employees eventually returning to the workplace in this strange era of COVID-19. If you are an employer at the moment, you would be absolutely forgiven for being totally perplexed about what you, as a responsible organization, should be doing at the moment in terms of managing your staff's return to the workplace. Because, of course, we have differing key messages from Holyrood and from Westminster: stay alert, stay at home, and so on. You've got conflicting guidance from the UK government and the Treasury about how this furlough scheme is supposed to work. That scheme, of course, has been extended until October, but it will be changing from August. And it's unclear exactly how much employers will be expected to contribute towards furloughed employees' wages from that point. We're looking forward to more guidance on that by the end of the month. You've also got new workplace guidance from Westminster, but of course that only applies in England, not Scotland. So the list goes on. So what should we be doing now? Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I should say I'm an employment lawyer, not a health and safety lawyer. But what I will say is this: first and foremost, we, the employer, have to be carrying out a comprehensive risk assessment of our workplaces and our ways of working. And that risk assessment needs to be one which is heavily influenced by COVID-19 considerations. That risk assessment should also be carried out in full consultation with a trade union where one is recognised. And if no union is recognised, you can consult with employee reps or perhaps with the employees directly themselves. Now, that consultation is not a formal one in the same way that the TUPE consultation is or redundancy consultation is. Think of the health and safety conversation as exactly that: a talk with staff, an ongoing correspondence with staff about the health and safety risks in the workplace and the control measures which you're going to put in place to meet those risks. And this isn't just a legal tick box exercise. Consulting with employees is a great way of flushing out their concerns, their worries, their queries, and of course, most importantly, getting buy-in, getting their approval to what you're doing, which is vitally important. Now, what guidance should we be following in terms of control measures? Well, you've got the UK workplace guidance for 8 different types of workplace. There's some common themes amongst those notes. And here in Aberdeen, that's not a bad place to start, because I, for one, expect that when the Scottish Government guidance comes out, it's not going to be a million miles away from what the UK Government has produced. But that UK guidance is obviously just a bare minimum. It's non-statutory. You've also got your HSE guidance, and very importantly, your sector-specific guidance as well. And it's worth bearing in mind that what might be appropriate and reasonable for one organisation is going to be very different for another. So next up, if we are reopening our workplaces at some point, how on earth do we get people back to work? Everyone's going to be different. Everyone is going to have different situations, different circumstances. There will be those who will be desperate to get back to the office because the kids are driving them up the wall and they long for the peace of the commute and some normality. They may also miss the social side of work, although question how sociable offices are going to be in the new world with all the safety precautions. On the other side of the coin, there's going to be other people, other employees who are frightened to go back. Perhaps they are clinically vulnerable or extremely vulnerable under the government guidance through their own health or their own age or their pregnancy, or maybe they live with someone who falls into one of those camps. Maybe an employee doesn't feel able to go back to work because of childcare arrangements, and the school and nursery situation is still very much in the air. There will, of course, be those who are happy to stay on furlough and have discovered new hobbies and new interests and reconnected with family members and so on. Meanwhile, there'll be others who'll be very keen to get off furlough because of the reduced pay and they're worried about their job prospects. Either way, you're going to have your risk assessment, work out what roles your business needs to have at work, and then you're going to have to start having very frank, very open and honest conversations with your staff. Maybe you ask volunteers to work in the office, and if there are too many volunteers, then you might need to think about rotas or a selection process which is based on objective principles. You come into difficulties where you're trying to force people to return to work. We need to be sensitive to people's personal needs, not just on a human level, but of course because they have legal rights. Some people might complain of discrimination because what you're trying to do directly or indirectly discriminates against them on the grounds of age or sex or maybe disability. Others may try and claim that they're being subjected to a detriment because they have blown the whistle on a health and safety risk. And ultimately, worst case scenario, there might be some people who resign and claim constructive unfair dismissal. In all these types of cases, whatever you're trying to do, try and work out what the company's goals are and whether there is some way to achieve them while minimizing the health and safety risk and minimizing the impact on the individual. It's good for employee relations. It's good for avoiding the court system. Of course, I completely appreciate it's easier said than done, but that's the kind of balance we're all trying to strike. In terms of working arrangements, when we're back at the office, things are likely to be quite different. You might be looking at smaller teams working together, a rota system, staggered start and finish. We've heard about this in previous talks, different hours, sealing off communal areas and so on. Again, whatever you're looking to rejig, remember that it might represent a change to people's contractual terms and conditions for which you would normally need consent. If we're going through a big contractual variation process for something really important, pay, hours, and so on, there might be strong resistance from a large group of employees, and that might mean that knowingly or unknowingly, we're tripping into that painful collective redundancy territory, which will require consultation with employee reps. I'm going to leave it there, and I hope I've given you a few practical considerations to take away with you when you're planning a return to the workplace. Thank you, Graham.
Andy, fantastic insights there. You know, talking about that return to work and how we manage and deal with and respect, first of all, the people that have we've kept and maintained within our businesses and customers and so on. I'm just wondering if you've got a poltergeist in the background or your light is voice activated, but we'll deal with that one a little bit.
A lot of people ask me that, Graham. People think I'm working from a disco, but it is in fact an upstairs bedroom.
It's a very late 70s disco. Let me just point that one out. So, and I've probably been there and DJ'd in it. Just before we move on to Hugh, we're going to take some questions through the chat system in a moment as well. I'd like the panel to think about one of the key words that we've used here today, acceleration. I know Scottish Government are now talking about acceleration and Colette, you've mentioned it, Deborah, you've mentioned it, Andy, you've mentioned it, Jared, you've mentioned it. And also maybe inclusion with people. Will we get to the point, maybe Andy, that we've got to consider digital inclusion? You know, can somebody claim that they've been positively discriminated against because they don't have the digital infrastructure working from home, or how do employers take that into a risk assessment? But we'll perhaps deal with that, or we'll deal with that after Hugh. So Hugh has been at this as long as I have in terms of webinars, and he's now found his perfect camera angle with the bookshelf, and so. Well done. It's fantastic, and we're loving you for it, Hugh. Hugh's chairman at Clan, but also he's a business advisor. What we found through these events, from the very first one we had as a dinner in Aberdeen, was I remember Hugh quite distinctly saying, "What am I doing sat at this table?" And by the end of it, the rest of the room realised that we couldn't do without Hugh at the table. So, Hugh Little, good to see you. Good morning.
Morning, Graham. Morning, everyone. Thanks very much. It's been a really fascinating 45 minutes so far. Some great contributions. Really enjoyed it. My headline for today, I guess, is that the new journey needs to start now. So business leaders have, for the last 2 months, been faced with overwhelming challenges and uncharted waters as the full effects of the pandemic came to pass. Out of necessity, they have prioritise the current issues, the well-being of their staff and the well-being of their business. And whilst that has been essential to date, it will be even more essential going forward. The welfare and well-being of your staff will become a bigger and bigger issue. For example, for those who remain on furlough and who are beginning to question if there will still be a job there for them on the other side. Cash flows will continue to be an issue after businesses open up. It's important to factor in that for many businesses, their working capital requirements will get worse on the way out, as there will likely to be costs to be incurred before revenues start to appear, and certainly before any cash comes in from those revenues. So really important to maintain all of the work streams involving your people and your cash. Leaders are, though, now beginning to think about the future, both from a practical and a strategic point of view. Practical in the short term, of course, and a huge amount of work, as we've already heard today, is required to plan how businesses will open up again, how to make premises safe for employees to work in, how to show customers that your premises, be that an office, a dental practice, a hotel, or a shop, are a safe environment for them to enter. I'd like to refer you to an article which you can find online, certainly it's on LinkedIn, by Stephen Gow. Stephen is the general manager of the fantastic Chester Hotel here in Aberdeen, where he describes some of the changes that the hotel is going to face when they reopen. Some of the points he makes are eye-opening. For example, that waiters will not be bringing our food and drinks to our tables. They will instead be dropping off our food and drinks at a central location in the room, and you'll have to go and collect it from there. Take that one simple point of delivery of service and multiply it by the million other forms of delivery of a service from a supplier to a customer, and you can begin to see the scale of change that needs to be planned for. So plans to reopen, which for most will include large quantities of PPE, should now be being fully developed. Longer term strategies, I think there are a few key points worthy of note already developing. One, you need to have one. And I'm not being flippant here. You need to have a strategy, and not the one you had 3 months ago. This has to be a new strategy to take account of the new normal, whatever that will be for your particular business and sector. Whilst remaining focused on the well-being of staff and financial resilience, leaders will have to analyse which parts of their existing strategy remain fit for purpose and which parts will require to be amended. Secondly, Businesses which have gone digital or even more digital than before will be better positioned to recover quickly and smoothly. Technology has enabled businesses to rethink the ways in which products and services are provided. To give you a couple of examples, stock markets around the world have not missed a minute's trading, despite the fact that every single physical trading floor has had to be closed down. And Ernst & Young, one of the big four global accountants, say they are trading normally, despite having 300,000 of their staff across 150 countries working from home. The huge innovations in technology over the last 20 years or so have allowed these impressive performances, and it will be vital for every organisation in all sectors to explore how they can make greater use of technology, and especially digital technology, to achieve greater productivity and efficiencies and to drive growth. Thirdly, leaders should embrace, I think, any positive cultural and behavioural changes that the virus has brought about. The pandemic may have rendered some traditional strengths of your business as less relevant than before. And of course, technology is again at the forefront here, what with working from home, video conferencing, and collaboration tools all coming to the fore. Online sales and services have been growing for years, but the virus has moved online shopping of both product and services to new levels. You just have to look at the share prices of Amazon, Boohoo, and Netflix, all of whose share prices are now considerably higher than they were pre-COVID. They're all at all-time highs, where the rest of the equity markets around the world are down somewhere between 20 and 50%. At the very least, every organisation needs to look at developing multi-channel business models that combine digital with face-to-face offerings. And so there are just a few thoughts as to the future. Like everyone else, I have no idea exactly what the new normal is going to be, but I'm pretty sure that some of the foregoing is going to be relevant. And if you'll indulge me finally for a moment, Graham, I'd like to end this time on a slightly lighter note by telling you a true story about my granddaughter Emily, who will be 4 later this year. As mums of near 4-year-olds will understand, Emily is going through a phase where she insists on choosing her own clothes each day, whether they match or not. One day recently, she came down wearing a pretty dress with matching tights, but she had also taken a pair of ankle socks and squeezed them over her hands like a pair of gloves. "Why are you wearing socks for gloves?" said her mum. And without missing a beat, Emily said that because today, mummy, I'm going to be fighting the Corona pirates. And so I think that we can all go to bed tonight feeling a little bit better, knowing that little Emily has sorted out the Corona pirates. That's it for me today, Graham. Thanks. Back to you.
Hugh, thank you very much. A Corona pirate, so it's a beer in one hand and a Captain Morgan's in the other if you're a grown-up, not a 4-year-old. So great insights there, and thank you very much, Hugh. Just as we're, and thank you to all our panelists, we're going to spend the next 10 minutes circulating some questions from the audience, but also through the panel as well. One question, particularly for you, Deborah, but also I think it has a wider effect across the whole panel, is about acceleration. We've seen drug research and delivery accelerate into weeks and not months. From an IT point of view, whether it works or not, and the majority of time it does, we've seen government roll out some IT infrastructure projects for funding support and these sort of things, furlough support, and these have been rolled out in weeks. You know, we've done more than 6 weeks, you could say, in an IT infrastructure in government than we've done in the last probably 3 to 5 years. And that's not an exaggeration. These big projects really are difficult to deploy. So how do we maintain that acceleration? Do you think that acceleration in your industry is going to stick, Deborah? And how do we ensure that we maintain trust and confidence right the way through that process as we get faster? How do we maintain that? Maybe start with you, and then we'll come to the rest of the panel and talk about acceleration.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it is going to stick, certainly in my industry. And I think it's going to be prioritization of projects. So obviously, COVID has come from nowhere, but for our industry, whether it's the regulatory authorities, the manufacturers, we've still got to, as much as we can at the moment, move other therapies through. And obviously we've got Colette on, so, you know, things like a lot of cancer trials aren't happening, a lot of cancer patients, and a lot of patients with chronic disease in a way are now at risk. I think what's going to happen is for priority areas, and particularly post-COVID, where we're going to have to accelerate a whole lot of other drugs for cancer. And I know Rebecca asked the question for rare diseases. There are patients who are going to need them more than ever. But these systems that are now in place, and the trust is definitely there because patient safety isn't being compromised, the whole process isn't being compromised. It's the people who are part of this process being able to focus on what's important, and you can see what can happen, you know, when that's the case. I know from our meetings, and we've had 2 with the MHRA over the past couple of weeks, they seem to be so much happier working in the way that they are now and incredibly efficient. The same is true in the US for the FDA. So I think this will stick, and I think they will consider all and every therapy, you know, as it relates to what we're doing. But it's now going to be prioritized, it's going to be ranked, and they will put the same effort that we're seeing now and the same focus and the ability to accelerate on the stuff that really matters, in the same way as COVID certainly does. So yeah, I think we'll not quite go back to the old norm, and we'll not quite stick 100% to the new norm, but I think, you know, we'll probably be, I say for my industry, somewhere in the 80% of being closer to what's happening now, continuing for the future.
Okay, thanks, Deborah. Graham has just texted me there to say that his laptop has crashed, and that's why he's looking so quiet and still. Never looked so quiet and still. I was getting worried there. I thought he died.
Yeah, no.
Never sat still in his life, I don't think. Thank you very much for that. The other thing that I was thinking around, we all talk about acceleration, what I've noticed is, well, I don't know if I've noticed it yet, but I think it's going to come over the hill, is that everybody's been working really, really fast and accelerating. I know even from ourselves in SBRC, what we've had to work in the last few weeks as well. How do we basically maintain the acceleration, but also remind ourselves that everybody's working from home, they've got their families and stuff. So Claire, even that's on, she always takes her video off because she's got her 2 small kids, and she's my right-hand woman for all of these webinars. And everybody's trying their best. So we need acceleration, but we also need to make sure that we're protecting the human element as well, that there's not this, you know, everybody's working really fast, and then there's this huge doldrum in the next few weeks where, you know, there's mental health problems and all that kind of stuff as well. Whereas before, I think, we talk around mental health. Now we need to really walk the walk going forward. Does anybody want to take that up?
Jude, I'm happy to come in at that point. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those expressions that we're going to miss at the end of all of this. But no, I totally agree with what you're saying, actually. I think we all have learned so much in a relatively short period of time about the advantages of digital technology. And, you know, to Hugh's point about developing a new strategy for a new normal, we've now implemented some aspects of a 5-year strategy in the space of about a month. And to Deborah's point, I don't think we will go back to how we were before. But on the point about staff and mental health and accelerating while we're all still stuck at home, I think one of the things we have to remember in any kind, this is essentially a big change management program. That's what we've all got to start thinking about. And a really important part of that is as we reboot our strategies for the future, start to think about what we're just not going to do anymore. And that frees up the headspace and the flexibility then to focus on the things that we do need to do for the future. Deborah's point, you know, about 80-20 in terms of the past and the new way of working. I think for something like cancer support services and other services of that type, I can't see us moving away completely from face-to-face, but it's been absolutely incredible to see how quickly not just the teams have adapted to delivering services digitally, but actually the way that clients have embraced that and stepped up to that. So I think while this is difficult just now, I think there is so much of a positive nature that will come out of this, but we've got to really consider what we stop doing so we can give that acceleration the pace that it needs.
Okay, perfect. It's also, Jared, do you have something on that?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on obviously the rapid pace of digitalization and technology on the back of COVID-19. A lot of companies, both large and small, simply weren't ready for it. And that means that they've been forced into this current digital environment, instead of recognizing the benefits of really integrating technology into their organizations and embracing the cultural change that's needed to remain relevant and fit for purpose in what's a very ever-changing world. What I would say is that you can't keep up with technology. Don't try. What you can do is cultivate the right culture and environment, simply by, certainly for business leaders, stepping away from that command and control, moving out of the way of areas that really aren't your areas of expertise, really starting to take counsel from those individuals within your organization that maybe have the experience and the ideas, be bold enough to listen to those new ideas and ways of working, and start to break down and move away from that silo thinking in your organization, streamline your decision making, really empower your workforce and embrace their innovation and passion. I think only then will you really begin to understand how becoming more digital will impact and enhance your organization.
Okay, anything from Hugh? Hugh?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with Deborah about prioritization. I'm really focused on well-being. I think nothing good's coming out of this, but I think if anything good's coming out of this, I think we will look after our colleagues much better than we did before, and we'll have much more time for them. And I tend to agree with Jared too. Anyone who knows me well will know how strongly I feel about good communications in an organization, and how generally any business problem can usually be broken down into either a failure or a lack of communications. And I think we will be better communicators after this. I think we'll be better listeners after this, which is a point that Jared was making there. So hopefully some of these softer issues perhaps will make us all a little bit better going forward, and will make our organizations better.
Okay. Graham, we were getting very worried about you because you were quiet and still. That's not normally something you would describe.
There's three words that people never use about me: quiet, still, and sinewy. Those are the three words that are never ever used.
I never mentioned sinewy. Okay. I've got a question for you, because you have stepped in to help me with these, because we do so many of these webinars, and we're starting to do some in Dundee and everything next week as well. And we did High this week. And I find them sometimes draining, that you have to prepare so much for them and stuff. And you've been helping with that and getting the right panel together and stuff. But you never mention IFB, or you never mention anything that you guys are doing. And I know you're doing some really good work in the background around how you're coping with COVID. So do you want to spend some time? I'm going to turn the tables onto you now.
I'll just take payment in cigars as normal. I think from our point of view, as much as my laptop just crashed, and there's the rule, all these IT guys will preach to you about what to do and not to do, but don't have 27 tabs running video open at the same time, because your machine will eventually overheat, and then just go, no, let's just stop. I think from IFB's point of view, we're all using the services that we provide as a business. I think that the pre-COVID, home working, flexible working, lots of people got it, but they were mainly either privileged users, at a C-level within an organization, or they were the IT bods within an organization. And we take it for granted that this stuff works. Now everybody is, if you consider that, we're responsible for maybe 400,000 end users across the UK and internationally, and every single one of them is now at home working. And there's advantages and disadvantages of that, and so the IT's worked. If you consider how well the internet is held up as a business tool, it's a proven, proper business tool. And what we're doing with our customers now is business as usual, making sure there's enough bandwidth, but making sure that it's secure, making sure it's reliable. But then the recovery stage is not everybody's going to turn up back to that office at 8:30 on Monday morning. So how do we help? We're elbow deep just now helping customers plan a return to what the next norm will be. And that's going to be, I think we touched on it earlier, consulting with staff and saying, right, okay, you're a prime candidate to work from home, continue working from home. How do we, and it's back to communication, how do we work that through? We've been in this state since second week in March. The entire IFB team's been working from home since second week in March, and it's worked amazingly well. But we know there's a lot of SMEs, and back to, maybe if I can corner off there about the government advisory board, there's a lot of SMEs are going to struggle with restart and reboot here, and that's what we're focused on. And that's consultation. We don't want to sell you hardware. We don't sell laptops, although maybe I should after this morning. But it's about the service and the predictability, and we can come in and that's what we're focused on. So, I mean, thanks for the opportunity to speak about IFB. We 4 out of the 5 world's biggest oil and gas supply companies use IFB. 3 out of the 5 top legal companies, not CMS, use IFB in Scotland as well. So, you know, we've got some really heavy, and, you know, some of the biggest charities, not Clan, you know, I know these guys, we work with them. We work with them based on customer needs, not selling you technology. And everybody's need just now is to be trusted, confident, secure, predictable, online, connected. And we've been doing that for a long time. So, you know, but we also love this. The reason I've stepped forward to help SBRC and you, Jude, is because there's a community around this. This wouldn't work without you guys on the screen or the audience that we've got just now. People want to get involved.
Yeah. I'll just go to the next question and then I'll let you ask the rest then, because it's from Atwell. And Deborah, I think you need your crystal ball for this one. He wants to know what, in your opinion, when will the vaccine be mass produced?
Ooh, crystal ball's broken. No, this is, and I don't want to be the kind of the doom and gloom merchant here, but there may never be a vaccine. So there are just over 100 in clinical trials or in development at the moment. Another new thing about this virus is how the immune system reacts to it, and it doesn't react to it in an expected way. So even from people that have had the disease, your ability to make the antibodies that then give you the natural protection doesn't seem to be that strong particularly, and that's the best way of generating protection. So a vaccine tends to be, unless with a bit of jiggery pokery and adding some magic adjuvants to the vaccine, you tend not to get as good a response. So, you know, there's absolutely no guarantee that we're even going to have a vaccine for this. And you raise a brilliant point about mass production. We're going to have to generate 7 billion doses, and that's assuming that the vaccine works just with one inoculation. 7 billion doses. We're going to have to generate a vaccine that's going to be stable in all continents. So imagine, you know, sub-Saharan Africa, where you have no power for plugging in fridges. I know some of the ones being trialed at the moment, you have to keep at a refrigerated temperature because the formulation's not been developed yet. So the science might work, but it's got to be a product and something that we can roll out as soon as possible. And manufacturing a vaccine makes manufacturing our drugs look like, oh, a cakewalk. It's very complicated. So the infrastructure that you would need, you know, even to generate a normal vaccine for flu, it's a big old job. We've never been in this position before where we've also got to, you know, vaccinate people pretty much at the same time if possible. So again, we're learning on our feet as an industry as this goes. So parallel to trying to develop vaccines, we've also got to look at treatments, not just to use before a vaccine's available, but potentially something that we can accept, like, you know, even Tamiflu, for example, where there's a flu vaccine that fails if you have a flu outbreak, something that means you can treat it rather than prevent it. But both strategies are running in parallel, but both have the same issues. Can you make it at scale, and can you deploy this across the world to 7 billion people who are going to need it? So yeah, great question.
Okay, thank you. I know, Jude, you've got me primed to ask a question, but I can't see it in the chat. And just as a bit of filling, Colette, can I ask you, with your other hat on, just as a little bit of filling, Jude, okay? Your other hat on is the President of the Chamber of Commerce. And you, like many others, were on that advisory group and economic recovery seminar yesterday with Benny Higgins. And he had a call for arms saying, what are the things that businesses and people in Scotland want to bring to him so he can advise Scottish Government on what the next parts of recovery should be. As I said earlier, and I've got a little bit of my bee in my bonnet about SMEs not being reasonably supported at a Scottish Government or UK Government level. We were an hour and 40 minutes into that broadcast before he mentioned SMEs, given that there's 52% of the employment in Scotland comes from SMEs. What do you suggest as the Chamber? What could we do to, is it better coming through Chamber as members to make our case to many in that advisory panel as SMEs? How did you take that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think the support for SMEs, I think this outbreak has highlighted the fact that the SMEs aren't being considered properly, but it has always been so. I mean, this was the case as long as I've understood sort of the food and drink industry, apart from anything else. In terms of how we get to government, it's absolutely right that we should use the channels available to us. And I think the local chamber works very, very closely with the Scottish Chambers of Commerce and also with the British Chambers of Commerce, and they've actually done sterling work behind the scenes. Of course, the challenge when you're a trade association of any description is that people don't often see what you're doing because a lot of it's behind the scenes. But they have, I think, been influential in securing some of the grants and loans systems that have actually emerged from that, and I think particularly at Scottish Government level. So I would very much encourage the SMEs to kind of brigade themselves behind whichever trade associations that they're members of. And the key to this is to develop some very clear, consistent messages to government about what is needed during the reboot and recovery phase, so that we're not kind of muddying the field by asking for too many different things. So focus on the consistent messages and the things that would have the greatest impact. And, you know, there are many issues that are shared by all businesses, regardless of whether they're food and drink or charities or whatever it happens to be. So I would definitely call for collective action on that.
Good. Hugh?
Yeah, as one of the ladies said there, it has always been thus. I mean, you can go back to the 70s and 80s and 90s, and if one of the world's largest companies said, we'll come to Scotland if you give us X million pounds to go to set up a building in Cumbernauld or whatever, then more money was given to those companies than to all of the SMEs in Scotland put together. It's always been that way. I think if I was speaking to Benny Higgins, I would say that the Scottish National Investment Bank that's been formed and starts trading next year, I would make that solely for the benefit of SMEs. And I think that if I was the Scottish Government or speaking to the Scottish Government, I would suggest to them they should have a minister for SMEs. It is a hugely important part of our economy and is often underserved.
And I think to support that as well, we are the most at threat. You know, that out of all of this, it's the SME community that is the most at threat. Everybody's at threat. We understand that, and it doesn't matter which market space you're in, but we are the most at threat, and actually we contribute as much, if not more, to the wealth, breadth, and depth of the economy, regardless of what sector we're in. So that's a really important part there, Hugh.
Graham, can I also add to that? I think the banks have a huge part to play in the next 6 to 18 months for SMEs. Because if they don't treat SMEs properly, we are going to have some major casualties in the SME sector. And I'm beginning to sense from speaking and listening to people that the banks who started off, I think, being quite soft and welcoming and we're going to be flexible. I'm beginning to sense a hardening of the banks' attitudes over the last few weeks. And if that continues to apply to SMEs, then we're going to have some real trouble coming out of this, because, as I said earlier on, working capital is going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. You know, from the group of people that we've got in the audience today and also the panel here, you know, there's a lot of nodding heads about what we need to be doing. I think there's never been a more appropriate time for us to actually take action and get behind our trade bodies and represent to government saying we're open for business, come and tell us what you want to do. If nobody tells them what to do, they're going to default to type, and we've got to try and influence that as much as we can. And I agree with everything that's been said there.
Greg, could I just, there was one point I meant to make actually and forgot in the process of speaking, but there is an emerging issue, of course, which is that we now have a different playing field south of the border from north of the border. And I don't want to get political about it at all, but at some point soon, there needs to be some clarity in Scotland about the rate and pace of release of restrictions. I totally understand the need to control this disease and to keep restrictions in place to ensure that people are safe. But I think we're all in a vacuum at the moment, and we need some kind of clarity about the timing of when certain things will get back to a level of normality again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we've overrun because I took a little bit of an interlude, as you noticed, and I cocked things up a little bit, and I'm really sorry about that. If there's nothing else to add, I would like to say, Jude, you have got something to say? Or you?
One question that I actually think is really relevant as well, and I think it's in the mind of a lot of people out there. So it's a question for Andy, and it says that we've managed to remain operational with all staff still employed, albeit working from home. Normally they'll be taking annual leave over this time, but are obviously not keen to do so whilst the restrictions are on. This will obviously impact us if everyone wants to wait until August, September to take their leave. How can we be fair and encourage them to take a break for their own well-being? So it's like a follow-on to that conversation around the rate of acceleration and stuff like that as well, that how do we encourage people, even though all they can do is stay at home?
Yes, it's a difficult one in terms of messaging. Legally, we had initially guidance saying that employees could take holiday during furlough, and everything else. If you've managed to keep people on the books, or you've managed to keep them on the books but on furlough, you can, of course, compel people to take holiday. All employers can do that by serving the right amount of notice. But there's an employee relations issue here in terms of people feeling frog marched into holiday at a time when they can't even, go to Inverurie and sit in a cafe. So yes, it's all about gentle nudges, I suspect, in terms of saying to people, look, we know you can't go anywhere really at the moment, but we all benefit from time away from the laptop, time away from the work phone, spending time on the floor with the kids playing Lego and board games. Use that time, get some rest, and come back refreshed and all guns blazing. I'll be honest, I took holiday over the Easter. We were due to go abroad. I didn't cancel my holiday as such. I couldn't go abroad, but I took the time off anyway, and I loved it. It was great. I got to spend the time with my 3 kids and do acres of painting in and around the house. So, as I say, I think it's just about gentle encouragement. It's obviously not going to be helpful if we are having to go back to the office and suddenly everyone then wants to take the time off. In terms of productivity, that's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So gentle encouragement, or if you are feeling operationally the strain, you could actually compel people at the end of the day. But there are, as I say, employee relations issues in doing that.
Thank you, Andy. I mean, that's a problem that we're all struggling with, and I think gentle people communication, these are the things that we should all take into account as we're doing that. But I think some of the points today from the panel about acceleration, trust, staying safe, remaining safe, and we don't like talking about it, and some of us feel uncomfortable about it, not just on the panel but wider, in terms of how do we get back into that sales mode, how do we get back into that customer support and service mode really quickly, and maintaining with the regulations that are in place. I'd like to say thank you to Jude and SBRC for allowing me to host this. It's been great seeing Colette, Deborah, Jared, Andy and Hugh. Thank you all for your contribution. Thank you to all for participating online. Sorry about the little hiccup during it, and thank you for staying with us. There will be another one. We're running these on a regular basis, Jude, so another couple of weeks before we run the next one. Yep.
For the 2 weeks, so if anyone's got any topics, I think from today maybe we look at getting one of the banks on, or maybe British Business Banking and stuff, to get rid of the urban myths around what banks can and can't do. So we've got a really good straight talker from British Business Bank that could help the SME community. So yeah, any ideas, just give us, send us an email, and we'll also send out Colette's details for the quiz on Sunday night.
Everybody's got to take their virtual fiver. It's a real fiver to join, is it? Is that what we're after?
It's an online £3 contribution plus anything else you feel inclined to contribute to it, but it's great fun. I would recommend it, actually. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just, before we all go as well, that the birthday banner behind me is not for me. Okay, it's for my son who's in the audience just now, and he's not 6 years old. He's a lot older than that. He's 24. I know I don't have the face of a father.
Cameron.
Happy birthday, Cameron. Hope you have a lovely day, and we'll virtually see you later on. And hey, look, if I can't abuse my position as host, that's just, you know, that's where we go. Great seeing you all. Thank you all. Thank you all for participating. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye.